Welcome to the very first episode of GFB Express, brought to you by GiveHimHellBrigham.com. My name is Garrett McClintock. I am the co-host of Give 'em Hell Brigham with Jeff Hansen, who likes to do our BYU Daily Dose, and we're adding the GFB Express to our channel lineup as a national coverage with me, Garrett, hence the G in GFB, with a national coverage, just a quick hitter most weekdays, talking about the latest news around the college football world. The not so biggest news, but with SEC, with Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC and SEC media days being, starting today and continuing for the rest of this week, or most of this week through Thursday, rather, I should say. Oklahoma and Texas are bringing back officially the branding of the Red River rivalry. While it is still always the shootout in our hearts, I think rivalry is much better than showdown. So it's still confusing because it seems like they snip, snap, snip, snap. It's a Michael Scott situation. But it seems like for the foreseeable future, they are sticking with rivalry. If you have not been paying attention or living under a rock, I should say, there with regards to the Pat Fitzgerald Northwestern hazing case, the latest development is that 8 former Northwestern players have retained noted civil rights attorney Ben Crump and Chicago law firm Levine and Perconti for a lawsuit against the university for physical, sexual, and emotional abuse relating to the incidents that took place in the program. That was from Rittenberg from ESPN. So this is a very weird situation in that one, hazing to some extent happens, right? Like there's not that it is ever condoned, but it happens if your definition of hazing is just, hey, the freshmen have to carry the pads. Like there's sometimes you got to pay your dues and do things, but the things that were uncovered in the Northwestern case are weird as hell is the only way that they can possibly describe at a minimum without getting into things that you really don't want to put on your channel to be having to be talking about. But it is a very strange situation how, they say that all of the players came out in support of Pat Fitzgerald, but with how many people are in the program, when you're talking, he's been there for 17 years as the head coach, and you've got 120 some odd players. And every year, if you figure that maybe 30 of those, 40 of those are turning over year to year with walk-ons, guys are only there for a season, you're looking at upwards of, 1,000 some odd guys, multiple thousands of guys that have maybe even who have been and played under Pat Fitzgerald. So surely their note did not reach all of them that signed that petition backing him. The entire thing was a lesson in PR and how not to handle something, because it seems like, in what some other national podcast was saying and kind of talking to some labor attorneys, that Pat Fitzgerald has a very good case to get his money, because the way the university handled it by saying, we reviewed this, nothing really happened, but we're putting him on a 2-week suspension just to help him kind of think about things. And then immediately, less than 72 hours later, firing him for a cause, saying, because of this thing, the university already made their claim and they already said, we investigated this, we studied this. There was nothing of importance, like nothing that was majorly done. He didn't know about it, but he probably should have. So we're going to put him in some training. And then as soon as it blew up and all the actual details of the investigation came out, they turned around and fire him. Apparently Pat Fitzgerald, even if he, even if he should have been fired in the first place, with the way that they handled that, it put the university at risk. So this is going to be a mess for Northwestern, which is already a hard place to coach at with all their academic things. And, you burn the boosters who loved him. He was one of their best players in program history. You handle it this way. It's a new AD. It's a new president. There's a mess going on there. The other mess in college football in terms of, off the field things is definitely what's happening in Georgia. Since a player killed somebody with a car in a car accident, it's just been one thing after another with these Georgia, players, and really questioning into Kirby Smart and how things are run in Athens, and are things swept under the rugs. So over on UGAsports.com, which is the Rivals affiliate for Georgia, there's some great actual reporting, which is interesting, because there was this report from the Atlanta Courier, or Athens Courier Journal, the Courier Journal, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Sorry, the Courier Journal is relevant to the story later. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, where they put out this report about all the things that are happening with the Georgia football program and how Kirby Smart does not have his program under control and all of those things. And then this Jason Butt, or Butte, it's B-U-T-T, we'll say Butt, Jake Butt normalized that for him after playing in Michigan a few years ago. So this Jason Butt dug into it and found that the reporter who wrote that for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution previously worked for the Louisville Courier Journal and reported things it ran a very similar story about a lot of the area, like elite high school athletes in the area, and how they were kind of just shuffled through school and all these things. And there was an attorney involved, and it got to the point where it was uncovered that he said he had taped things, but then he had taped over the important parts of the interview where the bulk was, and was blaming things. And he ended up getting fired from this. The Louisville Courier Journal had to issue 10 corrections, 2 clarifications, and a statement as a result. And it was a massive, massive break of distrust within, that the Louisville area, and just overall within the community about trying to get this journalism out there. And so the UGAsports.com reached out to the reporter and asked him, hey, like, what the heck? And he said, hey, I want this to be off the record. And then UGA Reports.com said, it's important to note that on the record and off the record conversations are agreed upon between the reporter and subject. UGA Sports did not agree, nor was seeking off the record comments. So this is the statement back from the reporter. The following is off the record. Something that happened 35 years ago during a rough period in my life has no bearing on anything today. The question you need to ask yourself is whether it is appropriate for a government agency, in this case UGA, to use public resources to try to dig up dirt on a journalist who has published uncomfortable but true stories about that government agency. Obviously, this has been fed to you, even my personal phone number, which is known to a relatively small number of people at UGA. Is your devotion to the Dogs so great that you want to try to destroy a person whose work over the past century has exposed atrocities in the state mental hospital, saving countless lives, helped expose a cheating scandal in the Atlanta public schools, and had life-altering detrimental effects on thousands of poor African-American children, spurred legislative changes to protect children in the state's foster care system, and more? So do whatever you want to do to ingratiate yourself with Coach Smart and the others at UGA. Drop the worst moment in someone's life from 3.5 decades ago and ignore everything since then. I hope whatever momentary advantages you gain with UGA is worth the personal degradation you put yourself through. Again, every word here is off the record. I might consider talking to you next week. Right now, I'm too busy dealing with threats from Georgia fans, in quotes. Making sure that my family I feel safe to deal with you anymore. Which, this whole thing is a mess. So if you are a Georgia fan, why are you making threats? It does, like, just, you never, ever, there's zero reason to ever be making threats to somebody who is a reporter. If you are this person, Jason Butt from UGA Sports, this is a very strongly worded reply. You definitely chose to draw your line in the ground by saying you didn't seek anything off the record, which is probably true. Maybe I'm assuming is true. And it is very weird that this is something that's happened before. I don't know the full history of this journalist and what he's done with all these things with the Atlanta public schools and all these things, but those other things, maybe he did something sports related and he doesn't like sports and he's out against it. And he did look up that in this report, this UGAsports.com, they did look in that he doesn't list anywhere on his professional record. He doesn't list anything related to his time in Louisville as having worked in the journalism industry. So he has tried to completely scrub that incident from his career. So this is something that is definitely, Georgia's going to have a target on their back. They are looking for a 3-time national championship run, and they're the odds-on favorites to do it. And there's a lot of questions of how Kirby Smart runs his program, and rightfully so. I mean, football is something that we all love. If you're watching this, it is a game. It is a sport that we all love. We love the pageantry of college football. We love watching your hometown hero go out and play, on Saturdays and end up making it to the league. We love all of those things. But if this is really what is happening in Georgia, then there needs to be a clean house. There needs to be a house cleaning operation. This is something that cannot be allowed to happen at any university, at any level, where people gets preferential treatment because of their athletic abilities when it comes to the law. And in this case, someone actually died. It's not, this isn't, hey, you were at a campus, you're only 20 and you were at a campus bar or off campus bar, and a cop pulled over and talked to you and recognized you as a player, so we let you off with a warning instead of writing you a ticket for underage drinking. That is like mildly scratching the surface. There's an actual life at stake. This is somebody lost their life because of the decisions that players within the Georgia football program have made. I think as we head into the season, this is going to continue to grow and become something much bigger. And it's going to be something that gets talked about in all of Georgia's broadcasts, which we're going to be on primetime every single week. And it is something that may, depending on what happens, it may end up tarnishing, or if this is the tip of the iceberg, this may end up, this could be causing for change at a major journal as a major newspaper in Atlanta, or this could potentially, one path is that there's more and more is uncovered, and we see that Kirby Smart is handled in a situation similar to Pat Fitzgerald. Um, so enough about that. The last thing, the kind of first piece of news coming out of SEC Media Days today is that next year they will be hosting it in Dallas, which the Big 12 last week did theirs at the Cowboy Stadium at Jerry World. They're hosting it. The SEC will be moving theirs to Dallas to kind of ring in Oklahoma and Texas being in the league at the Omni Hotel. And Greg Sankey also announced that there are new policies for on-field storming. So the visiting team is going to get some money. I think that is the bare minimum of what they settled on. There was a discussion that they were going to get money and then like have the turn skipped. So like if it was a conference game, and it was Tennessee or Alabama was playing at Tennessee last year, Tennessee rushed the field after they knocked off the Tide, that the following game that would, instead of alternating years, you'd play 3 in a row. And you would miss your next home game against that school. Something like that was being discussed, but it seems like they're just going to do a financial penalty, which I don't get. Let people rush the field. Yes, there's a chance that it puts the university at risk for litigation. Just, you shouldn't be on the field anyway. If you're running on the field, you take your own chance of getting hurt. At BYU a few years ago, there was a field rushing, and I think a player some student broke their leg jumping down. That's the risk you take. But let the people rush the field. There's nothing else like it. I've rushed the field in a few games, being on the field, being around the players. It is a magical experience that creates a lifelong memory, especially for the younger fans. I don't get why we got to be up in arms about it. Just make some way of figuring out how to get the players out of the way, because you definitely do not want the opposing players to be around stupid drunk fans. So you got to make sure that happens. But check back, hit like and subscribe, fuel the algorithm, share this. We can give some feedback in the comments. This is a work in progress as I'm, getting comfortable in front of the mic and trying to figure out the pacing of doing a solo show. We will be back here weekdays on GFB Express. There's some issues with YouTube, so the URL may be changing a little bit, but here in the future, because it is GFB Express 1 right now, but we're getting that worked out with YouTube. Like and subscribe, fuel the algorithm. And thank you for listening and subscribing to GFB Express.